It's dangerous to be with you. In your company, a man cannot remain faithful to the truth without fear of calumny and violence. That's why I withdrew. Not, I repeat, from your future, but from your present. Not from your humanity, but from your inhumanity and meanness. I'm still prepared for any sacrifice, but only for life, not for you, little man. It was only recently that I saw the enormous mistake I made 25 years ago. I've been devoting my life to you in the belief that you were life, that you were hope and integrity, that you were the future. Many true and upright men have sought life in you, and all have perished. When this became clear to me, I resolved not to die a victim of your narrowness and smallness, for I have important work to do. Little man, I have discovered the energy that is life, and I no longer confuse you with the force that I sensed in myself and looked for in you. Only if I distinguish your character and behaviour, little man, clearly and sharply from those of one who is truly alive, shall I be able to make a great contribution to the security of life and to your future. It takes courage to disavow you, that I know, but I also know that I shall be able to go on working for the future because I don't pity you and because I have no desire to become a little big man through you, as your contemptible leaders have done. The life force in man has long been maltreated, but only recently has it begun to fight back. This is a great beginning towards your great future, and gives promise of a terrible end to every kind of smallness in little men. We have found out how the emotional plague operates. Having decided to gobble up Poland, it accuses Poland of planning armed aggression. Having decided to murder a rival, it accuses him of plotting murder. Having contrived some pornographic enormity, it accuses the healthy of sexual depravity. We've caught on to you, little man. We've looked behind your pathetic mask and seen through your pleas for sympathy. We want you to build a future with your work and your achievement. We don't want you to replace a bad tyrant with one who is still worse. More and more resolutely, little man, we are beginning to demand of you, as you demand of others, that you submit to the rules of life, and that you expend as much effort in improving yourself as you do in criticizing others. We are learning more and more about your greed, your irresponsibility, your passion for gossip. In short, your all-embracing sickness that is stinking up this fair world of ours. I know you don't like to hear this. You'd rather shout, hurrah! You embodiment of the future workers' fatherland or Fourth Reich. But I don't believe you'll be as successful in contaminating the world as you have been in the past. We found the key to your millennial secret. You're a brute behind your mask of sociability and friendliness, little man. You can't spend an hour with me without giving yourself away. You don't believe me? Let me refresh your memory. Do you remember the fine sunny afternoon when, in the person of a woodsman, you came to my house looking for work? You saw my young dog, who sniffed you lovingly and jumped up on you full of joy. You saw he had the makings of a fine hunting dog and said, "Chain him up to make him vicious. This dog is too friendly." I answered, "I don't want a vicious chained dog. I don't like ferocious dogs. I have a lot more enemies in this world than you, you friendly little woodsman, and nevertheless I prefer a sweet-tempered dog who's friendly to strangers." Do you remember the dismal, rainy Sunday when worry over your biological rigidity drove me out to a bar? I was sitting there drinking whiskey. No, little man, I'm not a drinker, though I like a drink of whiskey every now and then. Anyway, I was drinking a highball. You were slightly tipsy. You'd been in the war and had just come home from overseas. You described the Japanese as ugly-looking apes. And then, with that peculiar facial expression that I've purposefully provoked in my treatment room in an effort to cure your plague, you said, "You know what we ought to do to those Japs on the west coast? String 'em up, every last one of them. But not quickly, no, very slowly, twisting the noose a little tighter every 5 minutes. Very slowly, like this." And you twisted your hand to illustrate your meaning, little man. The waiter nodded his approval and admired your heroic virility. Have you ever held a little Japanese baby in your arms, you little patriot? No? On through the centuries you'd keep stringing up Japanese spies and American flyers and Russian peasant women and German officers and English anarchists and Greek communists. You'd shoot them, electrocute them, and asphyxiate them in gas chambers. But all that won't make the slightest change in the constipation of your bowels and mind, in your incapacity for love, your rheumatism and psychic disorder. No amount of shooting or hanging will pull you out of the muck you're in. Take a look at yourself, little man. That's your only hope. And little woman, do you remember the day when you were sitting in my office talking venomously about your husband, who had just left you? For years, you and your mother and your aunts and your great nephews and cousins had been sitting on him so heavily that he was beginning to shrivel up. He'd been having to provide for you and all your relations. In the last stirring of his life feeling, he finally tore himself away and came to me for help, because he wasn't strong enough to free himself from you inwardly by his own resources. He willingly paid you alimony, 3/4 of his income as prescribed by an abominable law. That was the price of his freedom from oppression, and he didn't begrudge it, because he was a great artist, and neither art nor true science can live in chains. Though you'd learned the profession, you wanted only to be supported by the man you bitterly hated. You knew that I would help him to free himself from unwarranted obligations, and that made you furious. You threatened me with the police. I was only trying to help the man in his dire need, but you said I wanted to take all of his money for myself. In other words, poor little woman, you credit me with your evil intentions. It never occurred to you to develop your aptitude for your profession. That would have made you independent of the man for whom you had long had no other feeling than hate. Do you think you can build a new world in such a way? I heard you had socialist friends who knew all about me. Don't you see that you're a type, that there are millions of your kind, and that you're destroying the world? I know. You're weak and lonely. You're tired to your mother. You're helpless. You yourself hate your hatred. You can't stand yourself, and you're desperate. And that, little woman, is why you destroy your husband's life, and you drift along with the stream of life as it is today. I also know that you've a good many judges and district attorneys on your side, but believe me, they have no answer to your misery. I see and hear you, little woman, in the person of a stenographer in some government building, taking notes on my past and present and future, my political outlook and my opinions about private property and Russia and democracy. I'm asked about my social status. I reply that I hold honorary membership in 3 scientific and literary societies, including the International Society for Plasmogeny. The examiner is impressed. At our next session, he says to me, "Here's something odd. It says in the record that you're an honorary member of the International Society for Polygamy." And we both laugh at your little mistake. Now do you know how I've come by my honours and dishonours, little woman of the wild fantasies? Thanks to your fantasies, not to my mode of life. Isn't it true that all you remember about Rousseau is that he wanted to go back to nature, that he neglected his children and sent them to an orphan asylum? You're malicious to the bottom of your soul. Your thoughts pass the beautiful by and come to rest on the ugly. Listen, all you righteous citizens. I've seen him drawing his curtains at 1 a.m. What can he be doing? And all day long his curtains are wide open. There must be something at the bottom of it. It won't help you any longer to use such methods against the truth. We know all about them. You're not interested in my curtains. You're interested in stopping my truth. You want to go on being an informer and a slanderer. You want to go on sending your innocent neighbour to jail if his way of life doesn't suit you, because he's kindly or free, because he works and doesn't bother his head about you. You're very curious, little man. You snoop and slander. Luckily for you, the police never inform on their informers. Listen, fellow taxpayers, he's a professor of philosophy, and a great university wants to employ him to instruct the young. It's an outrage. Down with him. Hurrah for the taxpayers. Let them decide who is to teach and who isn't. Whereupon your righteous housewife, also a taxpayer, sends in a petition against this teacher of truth, and he doesn't get a job. Little housewife and taxpayer, righteous mother of patriots, you've proved more powerful than 4,000 years of philosophy and science, but we're beginning to understand you, and sooner or later your righteous machinations will be stopped. Listen, ye faithful guardians of public morality. There around the corner, a mother is living with her daughter. The daughter has a boyfriend who goes to see her late at night. Have the mother arrested for procuring. Call the police in the interests of morality, law, and order. And this mother is punished because you prurient little man, go poking your nose into other people's beds. You've shown yourself up. We know the motive behind your morality, law, and order. Aren't you always trying to make passes at waitresses? Yes, we want our sons and daughters to enjoy their love openly and not, as you would like them to, in dark corners. We honour those courageous fathers and mothers who understand their adolescent sons and daughters' love and protect it. Such mothers and fathers are the seed from which will grow the generations of the future, healthy in body and mind, untainted by your scatological fantasies, you little impotent man of the 20th century. Listen, fellow citizens, have you heard the latest? He's a homosexual. He assaulted one of his patients and the poor man fled with his pants down. Admit that you drool with lust as you tell this true story. Do you know where it came from? It grew from the manure pile inside you, from your filthy diseased nature, your constipation and your loathsome desires. I've never had homosexual desires like you, little man. I've never wanted to seduce little girls like you, little man. I've never raped a woman like you, little man, and I've never suffered from constipation like you, little man. I've never embraced a woman unless she wanted me and I wanted her, and I've never stolen love like you, little man. I've never exhibited myself in public as you do, little man, and I haven't got a scatological imagination like you, little man. Have you heard about this? He molested his secretary so much that she ran out on him. He'd been living alone with her in the same house. His curtains were drawn and the light was on in his room until 3 in the morning. You said that Lemaitre was a voluptuary who choked to death on a pasty. The spittle ran down your jowls as you spoke of Crown Prince Rudolph's morganic marriage. You said that Eleanor Roosevelt wasn't quite normal, that the president of X University has caught his wife in flagrant, and that the village school teacher had a lover. Didn't you say all that, little man? Oh, you wretched, miserable citizen of this planet, who have been frittering away your life for thousands of years and are still up to your ears in muck. Arrest him. He's a German spy. It wouldn't surprise me if he were a Russian spy, and an Icelandic spy to boot. I saw him on 86th Street in New York at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What's more, he had a woman with him. Do you know, little man, how a bedbug looks under the northern lights? No, I didn't think so. Someday there will be strict laws against your bedbuggishness, little man. Severe laws for the protection of truth and love. Today you throw adolescent lovers in jail, but someday you will be sent to a house of reflection for smearing decent people with your filth. There will be a new kind of judge and lawyer. Their stock in trade will not be the formalistic pettifoggery of today, but truth, justice and kindness. There will be laws, severe laws for the protection of life, and you will have to obey them, little man, though you'll hate them. I know. You'll go on with your emotional plague, your slander and intrigue, your diplomatic manoeuvres and inquisitions for 3 or 5 or 10 centuries more, but in the end, little man, you'll be defeated. You'll be defeated by your own feeling for cleanliness, which today you keep blocked up deep inside you. No Kaiser, no Tsar, no father of the world proletariat has conquered you. They've enslaved you, but none has been able to rob you of your meanness. What will get the better of you in the end, little man, is your feeling for cleanliness, your yearning for life. Of that there is no doubt. Cleansed of your smallness and meanness, you'll begin to think. At first your thinking will be pitiful and misguided, but you will be seriously thinking. Your thinking will cause you suffering, and you'll learn to bear it, just as I and others have had to grit our teeth and bear the suffering provoked by our thinking about you for years on end. Our sufferings on your account will make you think, and once you started to think, you'll be amazed at your last 4,000 years of civilization. You'll wonder how you could have put up with newspapers full of nothing but receptions, parades and medals, prosecutions and executions, foreign policy, realpolitik, and diplomatic skullduggery, mobilization, demobilization and remobilization, non-aggression pacts, drilling and bombing. You absorbed that stuff with the patience of an enslaved sheep. If you'd stopped there, you might still have understood yourself. But no, for centuries you took it up, you echoed it. You distrusted your own sound ideas and accepted the false ideas you read in the papers because you thought that they were patriotic. And that, little man, is something it will take you a long time to get over. You will be ashamed of your history, and the only hope is that to our great-great-grandchildren the study of history will no longer be a torment. It will no longer be possible to carry out a great revolution in order to go back to Peter the Great. A glimpse of the future. I can't tell you what your future will be. I have no way of knowing whether you'll ever get to the moon or to Mars with the help of the cosmic organ I've discovered. Nor can I know how your spaceships will take off or land, whether you will light your houses with solar energy, or whether you'll be able to walk with someone in Australia or Baghdad through a slit in the wall of your room. But I can tell you what you will definitely not do in 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 years. Would you listen to that? He's a crank. He can tell me what I won't do. Is he a dictator? I'm not a dictator, little man, though what with your smallness I might easily have become one. Your dictators can tell you only what you can't do in the present without ending up in a gas chamber. They can no more tell you what you will do in the distant future than they can make a tree grow faster. But where do you get your wisdom, you intellectual servant of the revolutionary proletariat? From your own depths, you eternal proletarian of human reason. Listen to that, he gets his vision from my depths. I haven't got any depths, and what kind of individualistic talk is this anyway? Oh yes, little man, you have depths, but you don't know it. You're afraid, mortally afraid of your depths. That's why you neither feel them nor see them. That's why your head swims when you look into the depths. Why you reel as if you were on the edge of a precipice. You're afraid of falling and losing your special character. Because, try as you will to find yourself, it's always the same cruel, envious, greedy, thieving little man that turns up. I wouldn't have written this long appeal to you, little man, if you didn't have deep depths. And I know these depths in you, little man, because in my work as a physician I discovered them when you came to me with your affliction. Your depths are your great future, and that is why I can tell you what you will certainly not do in the future. A time will come when you won't even understand how you were able, in these 4,000 years of unculture, to do all the things you've done. Now will you listen to me? Why shouldn't I listen to a nice little utopia in any case? Nothing can be done about it, my dear doctor. I'll always be the little man of the people with no opinion of my own. And anyway, who am I to... You just be still. You're hiding behind the myth of the little man, because you're afraid of getting into the stream of life and having to swim, if only for the sake of your children and grandchildren. All right, the first of all the many things you will not do in the future is to regard yourself as a little man with no opinion of his own, who says, anyway, who am I to... You have an opinion of your own, and in the future you will regard it as a disgrace not to know it, not to express it and stand up for it. But what will public opinion say about my opinion? I'll be crushed like a worm if I express my own opinion. What you call public opinion, little man, is the aggregate of all the opinions of little men and women. Every little man and every little woman has inside him a sound opinion of his own and a particular kind of unsound opinion. Their unsound opinions spring from the fear of the unsound opinions of all the other little men and women. That's why the sound opinions don't come to light. For instance, you will no longer believe that you count for nothing. You will know and proclaim that you are the mainstay and foundation of this human society. Don't run away. Don't be afraid. It's not so bad to be a responsible mainstay of human society. What then must I do in order to be the mainstay of society? Nothing new or unusual. Just go on doing what you're already doing. Till your field, wield your hammer, examine your patient, take your children out playing or to school, write articles about the events of the day, investigate the secrets of nature. You're already doing all these things, but you think they're unimportant, and that only what Marshal Medal Chest or Prince Blowhard say or does is important. You're a dreamer, doctor. Don't you see that Marshal Medal Chest and Prince Blowhard have the soldiers and the arms needed to make war, to mobilise me for their war, and to blow my field, my factory, my laboratory or my office to pieces? You get yourself mobilised. Your field and your factory are blown to pieces because you shout hurrah, hurrah when they mobilise you and blow your factory and field to pieces. Prince Blowhard would have neither soldiers nor arms if you really knew that a field was for growing wheat and a factory for making furniture or shoes, that fields and factories were not made to be blown to pieces, and if you stood four square behind your knowledge. Your Marshal Medal Chest and your Prince Blowhard don't know these things. They believe they themselves don't work in a field, factory or office. They think you work not to feed and clothe your children, but for the grandeur of the German or the worker's fatherland. Then what should I do? I hate war. My wife cries her heart out when I'm drafted. My children starve when the proletarian armies occupy my field and my land. Corpses pile up by the millions. All I want to do is till my field and play with the children after work, love my wife at night and dance, sing and make music on holidays. What should I do? Just go on doing what you've been doing and wanting to do all along. Work, let your children grow up happily, love your wife at night. If you stuck to this program knowingly and single-mindedly, there would be no war. Your wife wouldn't be fair game for the sex-starved soldiers of the workers' fatherland. Your orphan children wouldn't starve in the streets, and you yourself wouldn't end up staring glassy-eyed at the blue sky on some far-off field of honour. But supposing I want to live for my work and my wife and my children, what can I do if the Huns or Germans or Japanese or Russians or somebody else marches in and forces me to make war? I have to defend my house and home, don't I? Right you are, little man. If the Huns of any nation attack you, you've got to pick up your gun. But what you fail to see is that the Huns of all nations are simply millions of little men like yourself who persist in shouting hurrah, hurrah when Prince Blowhard, who doesn't work, calls them to the colours. Little men like yourself who believe that they count for nothing and ask, who am I to have an opinion of my own? If once you knew that you do count for something, that you do have a sound opinion of your own, that your field and factory are meant to provide for life and not for death, then, little man, you yourself would be able to answer the question you've just asked. You wouldn't need any diplomats. You'd stop shouting hurrah, hurrah, and laying reeds on the tomb of the unknown soldier. I know your unknown soldier, little man. I got acquainted with him when I was fighting my mortal enemy in the mountains of Italy. He's the same little man as yourself, who thought that he had no opinion of his own. Instead of laying your national consciousness at the feet of your Prince Blowhard or your Marshal of the world proletariat to be trampled on, you'd oppose them with your consciousness of your own worth and your pride in your work. You'd be able to get acquainted with your brother, the little man in Japan, China, and every other Hun country, to give him your sound opinion of your function as a worker, doctor, farmer, father, and husband, and convince him in the end that to make war impossible, he need only stick to his work and to his love. That's all very well and good, but now they've made these atom bombs, a single one of them could kill hundreds of thousands of people. Use your head, little man. Don't you think Prince Blowhard makes atom bombs? No. They're made by little men who shout hurrah, hurrah, instead of refusing to make them. You see, little man, it all boils down to one thing, to you and your sound or unsound thinking. And you, the most brilliant scientist of the 20th century, if you were not a microscopically little man, you'd have thought in terms of the world and not of any nation. Your great intellect would have shown you how to keep the atom bomb out of the world, or if the logic of scientific development made such an invention inevitable, you would have brought all your influence to bear to prevent it from being used. You're caught in a vicious circle of your own making, and you can't get out of it because your thought and vision have taken the wrong direction. You comforted millions of little men by telling them your atomic energy would cure their cancer and rheumatism, though you were well aware that this was impossible, that you devised an instrument of murder and nothing else. You and your physics have landed in the same blind alley. You know it, but you won't admit it. You're finished, now and for all time. I've offered you the curative powers of my cosmic energy, little man. You know it, I've told you so very plainly, but you keep silent. You go on dying of cancer and a broken heart, and on your deathbed you cry out, long live culture and technology. I tell you, little man, that you've dug your own grave with your eyes open. You think the new era of atomic energy has dawned. It has dawned all right, but not in the way you think. Not in your inferno, but in my quiet, industrious workshop in the far corner of America. It is entirely up to you, little man, whether or not you go to war. If you only knew that you're working for life, and not for death. If you only knew that all little men on this earth are exactly like yourself, for better or worse. Some day, how soon depends exclusively on you, you'd stop shouting hurrah, hurrah. You'll stop tilling fields and operating factories that are slated for destruction. Someday, I say, you'll no longer be willing to work for death, but only for life. Should I declare a general strike? I'm not so sure. Your general strike is a poor weapon. You'll be accused, and rightly so, of letting your own women and children starve. By going on strike, you will not be demonstrating your high responsibility for the weal or woe of your society. Striking is not working. I've told you that someday you would work for life, not that you stop working. If you insist on the word strike, call it a working strike. Strike by working for yourself, your children, your wife or woman, your society, your product, or your farm. Make it plain that you have no time for a war, that you have more important things to do. Outside every big city on earth, mark off a field, build high walls around it, and there let the diplomats and marshals of the earth shoot each other. That's what you could do, little man, if only you'd stop shouting hurrah, hurrah, and stop believing that you're a nobody without an opinion of your own. It's all in your hands, little man. Not only your hammer or stethoscope, but your life and your children's lives. You shake your head. You think I'm a utopian, if not a red. You ask me, little man, when you will have a good, secure life. The answer is alien to your nature. You will have a good, secure life when being alive means more to you than security, love more than money, your freedom more than public or partisan opinions. When the mood of Beethoven's or Bach's music becomes the mood of your whole life, you have it in you, little man, somewhere deep down in the corner of your being, when your thinking is in harmony and no longer in conflict with your feelings. when you've learned to recognize two things in their season, your gifts and the onset of old age, when you let yourself be guided by the thoughts of great sages and no longer by the crimes of great warriors, when you cease to set more store by a marriage certificate than by love between man and a woman, when you learn to recognize your errors promptly and not too late, as you do today, when you pay the men and women who teach your children better than politicians, when truths inspire you and empty formulas repel you, when you communicate with your fellow workers in foreign countries directly and no longer through diplomats, when instead of enraging you as it does today, your adolescent daughter's happiness and love makes your heart swell with joy, when you can only shake your head at the memory of the days when small children were punished for touching their sexual organs, when the human faces you see on the street are no longer drawn with grief and misery, but glow with freedom, vitality and serenity, when human bodies cease to walk this earth with rigid, retracted pelvises and frozen sex organs. You ask for guidance and advice, little man. For thousands of years you have had guidance and advice, good and bad. Not bad advice, but your own smallness is to blame for your persistent wretchedness. I could give you good advice, but in view of the way you think and are, you wouldn't be able to convert it into action for the benefit of all. If, for instance, I advised you to put an end to all diplomacy and replace it by your professional and personal brotherhood with all the shoemakers, blacksmiths, carpenters, mechanics, engineers, physicians, educators, writers, administrators, miners and farmers of England, Germany, Russia, the United States, Argentina, Brazil, Palestine, Arabia, Turkey and Scandinavia, Tibet, Indonesia, and so on, to let all the shoemakers in the world confer on the best way of providing the children of China with shoes, to let all the miners work out the best way of preventing human beings all over the world from suffering from cold, to let the educators of all countries and nations determine the best way of safeguarding the world's children against impotence and psychic disorder in later life, and so on. What would you do, little man, if confronted with these self-evident truths? Assuming for the moment that you didn't have me locked up as a red, you would reply in person or through some spokesman of your party, church, trade union or government. Who am I to replace diplomatic relations between countries by international relations based on work and social achievement? Or, there's no way of overcoming the discrepancies in the economic and social development of the various countries? Or, wouldn't it be wrong to associate with the fascist Germans or Japanese, the communist Russians or the capitalistic Americans? Or, what interests me first and foremost is my Russian, German, American, English, Jewish or Arab fatherland? Or, it's all I can do to manage my own life and get along with my garment workers union. Let someone else worry about the garment workers of other countries. You would undoubtedly use one of these statements, or another of the same sort, as an excuse for shirking your responsibility for human communication. Am I then utterly worthless? You don't give me credit for 1 ounce of decency. You make hash out of me. But look here, I work hard, I support my wife and children, I try to live a good life to serve my country. I can't be as bad as all that. I know you're a decent, industrious, cooperative animal, comparable to a bee or an ant. All I've done is to lay bare the little man in you, who has been wrecking your life for thousands of years. You are great, little man, when you're not mean and small. Your greatness, little man, is the only hope we have left. You're great when you attend lovingly to your trade, when you take pleasure in carving and building and painting, in sowing and reaping, in the blue sky and the deer and the morning dew, in music and dancing, in your growing children and in the beautiful body of your wife or husband, when you go to the planetarium to study the stars, to the library to read what other men and women have thought about life. You're great when your grandchild sits in your lap and you tell him of times long past and look into the uncertain future with a sweet childlike curiosity. You're great, mother, when you lull your baby to sleep, when with tears in your eyes you pray fervently for his future happiness, and when hour after hour, year after year, you build this happiness in your child. You're great, little man, when you sing the good, warm-hearted folk songs, or when you dance the old dances to the tune of an accordion, because folk songs are good for the soul, and they're the same the world over. And you're great when you say to your friend, I thank my fate that I've been able to live my life free from filth and greed, to see my children grow and to look on as they first began to babble, to take hold of things, to walk, to play, to ask questions, to laugh and to love, that I've been able to preserve, in all its freedom and purity, my feeling for the springtime and its gentle breezes, for the gurgling of the brook that flows past my house and the singing of the birds in the woods, that I've taken no part in the gossip of malicious neighbours, that I've been happy in the embrace of my wife or husband, and have felt the stream of life in my body, that I haven't lost my bearings in troubled times, and that my life has had meaning and continuity. For I have always hearkened the gentle voice within me that said, only one thing matters: live a good, happy life. Do your heart's bidding, even when it leads you on paths that timid souls would avoid. Even when life is a torment, don't let it harden you. When on quiet evenings, after the day's work, I sit on the meadow outside the house with my beloved or my child, alert to the breathing of nature, then a song that I love rises up in me, the song of humanity and its future. And then I implore this life to claim its rights and change the hearts of cruel or frightened men who unleash wars. They do it openly because life has escaped them, and I hug my little boy who says to me, "Father, the sun has gone away. Where has the sun gone? Will it come back soon?" And I say, "Yes, my boy, the sun will come back soon with its kindly warmth." I have come to the end of my appeal to you, little man. I could have gone on indefinitely, but if you read my words attentively and candidly, you'll be able to recognize the little man in you, even in connections I haven't mentioned. For one in the same state of mind is at the bottom of all your mean actions and thoughts. Regardless of what you've done and will do to me, of whether you glorify me as a genius or lock me up as a madman, of whether you worship me as your deliverer or hang or torture me as a spy, your affliction will force you to recognize sooner or later that I have discovered the laws of living energy and have given you an instrument with which to govern your lives with the conscious purpose which thus far you have applied only to the operation of machines. I've been a faithful engineer to your organism. Your grandchildren will follow in my footsteps and become wise engineers of human nature. I have opened up to you the vast realm of the living energy within you, your cosmic essence. That is my great reward. And to the dictators and tyrants, the crafty and malignant, the vultures and hyenas, I cry out in the words of an ancient sage. I have planted the banner of holy words in this world, long after the palm tree has withered and the rock crumbled, long after the glittering monarchs have vanished like the dust of dried leaves. 1,000 arks will carry my word through every flood. It will prevail.